If I were to ask you the question, why do you all go to church? I think everyone's had a, have you, yes?
To pray.
Pray, okay? We'll randomly pick people now, put people on the spot. Yes.
Go to heaven.
Go to heaven, all right.
Escape from the real world.
Escape from the real world. Yes.
To receive his Christ's body and blood.
Okay. To partake, to be in communion. Wonderful. Yes. A spiritual healing. You like the word healing. See, we all have been given gifts. It's how we use it. There's the story of, you might have heard it before, the keeper of a lighthouse. You know what a lighthouse is, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the keeper of a lighthouse was given oil supply for 1 month and said, this oil is exclusively to keep the lamp in the lighthouse lit so that ships can find their way. This lighthouse keeper, very generous man, a very nice man, to him came an old lady from the village and said, I need some oil for my house, so that I can keep the lamps in my own house burning to keep my family warm. Now, the lighthouse keeper said, after all, it's a genuine cause, it's a genuine reason, so why not share some of the oil? He gave some. Another man came and said, I heard there's some oil to borrow. Would you please give me some as well for my house? The man, seeing this as a generous cause, gave his oil, a bit of the oil, to the man as well. So he distributed that oil to different people. But remember, he was given that oil for one particular purpose, which was to keep the lamp in the lighthouse burning. But unfortunately, because he distributed that oil to different people for thinking that they were genuine causes, at the end, oil ran out for the very purpose for which it was given. And lo and behold, there was no more oil to keep the lighthouse lit. The lighthouse went out, ships couldn't find their way. There was a lot of loss, tragedy. That happens to a lot of us in life. We have been gathered together as the body of Christ for a certain purpose. If we do not come to church for that particular reason, and we invest our time, our spiritual health, wealth, all that for the wrong reason, then for the very purpose of being in the church, the meaning is lost. Church no more becomes meaningful. So it is very important to realize what the church and what coming to church means for each and every one of us. We have heard over the past few days this word kingdom focused. It's after all a wonderful theme. But we talk about church. But what is the church? Who is the church? What is the church? Who is the church? The fathers, especially the desert fathers, say, sometimes we say we go to church to pray. Of course, all those praying and your deification, your theosis, community, spiritual healing, to partake in the body and blood of Christ. The very essence of why we are here. But we need to realize that church in this world We are the church. So sometimes the Desert Fathers are very clear. If you do not have a physical building as a church to pray, let your bodies, let your minds, let your hearts become the church. So we ourselves are the temple of God. So this morning, I want to bring your attention to this wonderful verse from John 17. It talks about you and me as the church. They are not of the world. We read this particular gospel passage a couple of weeks ago. They are not of the world, even as I am not of the world. Sanctify them in the truth. Your word is truth. As you did send me into the world, so I have sent them into the world. And for their sake I consecrate myself, that they also may be consecrated in truth. So we as the church, individuals, whether we are in middle school, high school, college, post-college, working, family, for us as the church, we need to realize we are not of the world, even though we are in the world. We are in this world for a particular reason, that is to sanctify the world. As I said earlier, we are not redeemed from the world, but we are redeemed with the world. But the simple question that I ask people is, if you as St. Gregorio's, formerly Oak Park, and now St. Gregorio's Elmhurst, if that particular community disappears overnight, will that community, or will this place of Chicago miss you? If you, as the church, the Elmhurst Church, the Orthodox Church, if you go missing from your community overnight, will that community ever realize you're not here anymore? Because if they do not miss you, we have failed in our responsibility. We have. So we have to ask ourselves, it is not about having a great, wonderful physical building. It is important. It is not just enough that we have all these beautiful stained glass windows, these beautiful icons. What we need to is to become icons. Icons are meant to be, when we stand before an icon, it takes us, transforms us into the heavenly realm. There is a presence of blessing. So here, when we are asked to be the kingdom-focused church, we are being called to become icons of Christ. That we, through our presence, bring ourselves and others into the heavenly realm. That we, where we are placed, in school, in college, in our family lives, in our workspaces, at home, in our studies, to become icons of God's presence. And we have to ask ourselves, when we go from this conference, do we become them? And these few days must prepare us for it. Oh, you have made the uneducated to be fishers of men. So we have our own talents, but we need to be renewed, rededicated, transformed as we go back, and to say, do we become icons? That's why there is that wonderful saying, people are like stained glass windows. Why do you think people are like stained glass windows? Why would someone say people are like stained glass windows? Any comparisons? Let's hear. At least 2 volunteers. What do you think is a similarity between us people and stained glass windows? Do you know stained glass windows? Of course. Your church has a few of them, right? What is so particular about stained glass windows?
Built up of multiple pieces, different types of pieces.
I like that. Built up of multiple pieces. Yes?
When the light shines through, you can see the image.
When the light shines,
You can see the image of the stained
Okay. Good. Anything else? That's wonderful, Sharon. She's right. Stained glass windows. The particular thing about stained glass windows is when the sun is out. When the sun is out, it sparkles. You see it so clearly. But when darkness sets in, you see stained glass only if there is light inside. If the sun is shining out, you see the stained glass from far away. But when darkness sets in, you see stained glass windows only if there is light within. That is what a kingdom-focused church, a Christian, is meant to be. Not every moment in life is going to be light-filled, joy-filled, happiness, successful, highs. No. There will be so many moments in life where we will be happy, we will be joyous. But believe me, life is going to bring its share of disappointment, failures, frustrations. It is then that the inner light that has been given to us, that must shine from within, that the world knows. You are the light of the world, Christ said. And what have we done with that light? There is a reason as to why I've always said this before. You're the salt of the world. Christ didn't say you're the sugar. You're the salt of the world. Why do you think he said you're the salt of the world? I've said this before. Somebody should remember this. Because salt was something that was given as salary. You know, the Latin word for the word salary comes from the Latin word salarium, from which we get salary. So salt was given as salary to soldiers in the ancient days because it was so expensive. So they would give that in exchange to buy something. So Christ is saying, the salt of the world, meaning you add value to the world. Ask yourself, how do I add value to my family? How do I add value to my workspace? How do I add value to my married relationship? How do I add value to my university life? And it is not standing at the corner and saying, everyone else is going to hell, I'm the only one going to be saved. That's not what Christ expects. Our life becomes our gospel. So, people are like stained glass windows. So, when darkness sets in, the true beauty of a kingdom-focused church is revealed only when there is light from within. And it is only when we have light within that we will realize, the world will realize that we are truly kingdom-focused and nothing else. What do you think makes a kingdom-focused church? Yes.
Kingdom-focused people.
Kingdom-focused people, okay. Anything else? We don't have a lot of time, so. I always say, kingdom-focused church has a certain set of characteristics. They're filled with people on fire for Christ, who put selflessness, and there is no politics or personal agendas. They're all put aside for the glory of God. A wonderful definition. They treat their priests right and pay them the right salary. They give generously, evangelize tirelessly, and teach truthfully. They are a joy and blessing to every member and visitor, and a shining beacon in the community they faithfully serve. But all perfect churches have one more thing in common. What do you think that is? They don't exist. They don't. The perfect church. A kingdom-focused church? Yes. But a perfect church? No. And I'll tell you why. You might think I'm theologically wrong, but there is a reason as to why I say that. Look at all the churches that Paul writes to. They all have their difficulties, problems, issues. But the church in Corinth, deeply rooted immorality, all those kind of things. But we have to become kingdom focused. And there are certain things that we can do. First, Hebrews chapter 12 verses 1-2. There is in fact a verse which says, Christ is the pioneer or the leader and perfecter of our faith. Everything that we do have to be Christ-centered. And that goes without saying. But it's interesting. Look, the two words used, pioneer or leader, and the perfecter. The two Greek words actually means, the root word of the two words mean beginning and end. If you look at the two words, archegos and teleos, both means beginning and end. So when we say Christ has to be the beginning and end of our faith, and he uses this word in the beginning of the Gospel of John, various other places. So ask ourselves, in the faith that I show the world, is Christ my beginning? Is Christ my end? You might have seen this icon, right? Who is this? Who is this? Saint John the Baptist. I love this icon because what is the icon of John doing here?
Repenting.
Repenting, okay. Yes.
It looks like he's saying the Our Father prayer, like his hands into the John.
It looks like he's saying the Our Father prayer. I like the observation. Yes.
Usually pointing towards and looking towards Christ.
Yes. He's pointing towards someone else. His eyes, look, when we see different icons of St. John the Baptist, but this particular one I like because his eyes are stooped down, a stance of humility, but his hands are pointing us to someone else. The kingdom-focused church always points the community, points the believer, points the visitor, points the non-believer, the community, the world itself, to the kingdom, to Christ. And so that is something that we ourselves have to become. Because the moment we as a church, if we are successful, we are large in number, everything becomes about us. It becomes about Oak Park or Elmhurst or wherever the churches are. It's not about us. It is about Christ. The church is there to point towards Christ. And so, the kingdom-focused church, I say, have 4 things that it has to do. That's why I chose John 17. They're in the world, but they're not of the world. The kingdom-focused church should be in the world, unaffected by the world, but yet effective. To be unaffected by the world, but yet effective in the world. Ask ourselves, while I work, while I lead a married life, with my children, with my wife, with my siblings, with my teachers, with my brothers and sisters, with my parents, how can I be unaffected by their weaknesses, but yet be effective? Remember, we also have weaknesses. How can I be effective in the world without my shortcomings becoming an obstacle? A kingdom-focused church becomes effective and does not let the world affect them. Remember, the voices that we hear, whether we're at work, school, everything, is contrary to the culture of the kingdom. It goes without saying. And like St. John the Baptist, humbly, confidently pointing the way. And we are here, if you look at the theology of the icon, and I'm sure Elmhurst Church is one of those churches, at least within the churches here in America, would be on the forefront of iconography, even though it's borrowed from the Byzantine tradition. That the church lives in between the two comings of Christ. We talk about theologically, we might say, oh, we have the icon of the Theotokos with Christ, and then the church in between, because the church lives in between the two comings of Christ. But more than that, we are here as a kingdom-focused church to make the world ready, to make ourselves and the world ready for the second coming of Christ. To make ready a people. And believe me, you cannot make anyone ready unless you yourself are ready. You can teach, you can preach, you can say all the theology. As Dr. Mina said, you can have, we have all the faith of the past 2,000 years of the great fathers, scriptures, Christ himself, the apostolic tradition of all the great fathers of the church. But if that faith is not put into practice, if we are just a group that says we have a 2,000 plus years of history, but we do nothing about it, as He who we worship, Christ, became incarnate, our love has to become incarnate in the world. Our faith has to become manifest. There has to be an epiphanes, an epiphany, a revelation of our theology, of our faith in our lives, where we are. That is to make ready. The church is in the world to sanctify the world. But remember, it is very unfortunate. Christ established the church in the world to sanctify the world. The evil one planted the world in the church to destroy the church. Don't you see the issues, the problems, the politics, the corruption of the world affecting churches? Do you see that? Maybe not, because after all, you're a perfect church. We see that. I mean, maybe you don't. But in all our churches, the corruption, the politics, the bickering, the disputes, the disharmony, the hatred, the competition, all that is there. That is not a kingdom-focused church at all. And believe, it is God's work versus our vision. It's not our vision. The beautiful story incident of what I call a church is the healing of the paralytic man. Why do you think the paralytic man, or the incident of the paralytic man resembles what a church must be? What do you think is the comparison? Yes?
They blindly struggled and worked they didn't have any guarantee that their friend was going to be healed, but they did it anyway because they had trust in God, even though it should be impossible.
Wonderful. They blindly took, there was no guarantee. What else? Any others? Yes.
They were his hands and feet. They lifted him up and brought him.
They were his hands and feet. Okay? See, I always say, the main goal of that particular, or the friends, were to bring their friend to Christ. There are 4 different people. They could have had 10 different opinions of how to take it, right? There are 4 different people, 4 friends. We have friends. When we get together, it's not necessary all of us agrees. We could be brothers and sisters at home with our parents, married, newly married, married for 20 years. It's not that we should agree on everything, but for them, they might have had 10, 12 different opinions of how we must do this, how this must be executed. But only one thing mattered. That is to bring themselves and their friends into the presence of Christ. That is what the church must be. It doesn't matter for us. The goal is to bring ourselves and our brothers and sisters to Christ. And in spite of the fact that, look, you've noticed, the gospel says, the crowd was so thick that they couldn't go in through the door. Sometimes I think it's a good representation of some Orthodox churches. We are very reluctant to let anyone in. But don't you think after the man was healed, and if that man had to walk out through the door, they would have just moved away? They would have. Why did they move away when they came in? Sometimes it happens that way. That we don't let anyone in. We let a lot of people out. We do. Through our actions, through our behaviors, through our lifestyle. A lot of people walk out of the church. That is not what it must be. Because at the end, it's the vision of God that must be manifest in a kingdom-focused church. It is about His vision, not mine, to bring into the world. See, I always say, and I will end with this, look at our churches and ask ourselves, is our church what I call a university church, the arena church, the corporate church, the machine church, the family chapel church, or the legacy church? Now, everything has its own importance and prominence. And I think to a certain extent, a kingdom-focused church should be a combination of all these. All these. And when we are able to do that. And the name itself it explains itself very clearly. The university church. The emphasis must be on teaching and doctrine. We have to learn our faith in our church. I know sometimes Sunday school can get a bit tedious. And sorry for saying this, teachers can get a bit bored. I'm not pointing to anyone, so please, if I offended any Sunday school teachers, my apologies. But we have to learn the faith. We have the resources of learning the faith. Then the arena church, when I call it, please forgive me for using where entertainment and performance are key. Don't take it in the sense of entertainment in a worldly sense. In the sense where the arena church, where worship becomes the center. Worship becomes the center of. So we need to learn, but we have to ask ourselves, why do we come to church? To be worship-centered. The word itself, orthodoxia, made up of two words. Orthodoxia, straight faith, straight glory, whatever you want to call it, the right faith, right belief. Life has to become worship-centered. And worship is not just about the long services alone. Our life, even when we are not physically standing and doing a particular hour, our life, our words, our actions, what we do for our wives, for our husbands, for our parents, for our brothers, sisters, our actions have to become worship. Then the corporate church, that it's a large church, efficiency church, focused on a vision, that you have a goal. Then what I call the machine church. There are programs, missions, camps. Then the family chapel church. After all, community. In communion. You are a family. And then finally, legacy. That's why I asked, if the church, Elmer's church, goes missing, disappears overnight, will anyone miss you? If you left behind a legacy, rich in tradition, focused on the past, the cloud of witnesses that we have watching us run the race with perseverance and endurance, the legacy that is behind us. So ask ourselves, how can I make, as being members of the church, how can I learn? How can there be emphasis on teaching? How can there be emphasis more? We do that wonderfully at all our churches. But we should not rest there. We should take it a step ahead. And then I end. This might be a repetition of what I said earlier before. The 5 functions. And this has to be for a kingdom-focused Christian, a kingdom-focused family, a kingdom-focused church. Evangelism. What do you think is evangelism? When you hear the word evangelist, what do you hear? What comes to mind? Huh? What comes to mind? Yes.
A televangelist?
Tele-evangelist, okay. Evangelion, what does it mean? Good news. Evangelism is about being the good news. And evangelizing is not just about going for a mission trip somewhere in Africa. Good news has to start from ourselves. So when a kingdom-focused church, there is no kingdom-focused church without kingdom-focused individuals. Not at all. So evangelism is about, how do I become the good news? So that's why, in order for evangelism to really become meaningful in our life, there is discipleship. Discipleship, to be a disciple. What takes one to be a disciple of Christ? To be a disciple of so many things. But what is it that takes one to be a disciple of Christ? Huh? Righteousness, okay. But humility, discipline. But he who wishes to follow me, what did Christ say? Let's go according to what he said, order. He who wishes to follow me, let him, cross is second, let him deny himself. Then, everyone knows the word, the phrase, take up the cross. But he said one word after that. No. Let him deny himself, take up the cross. What's the next word? Daily. Take up the cross daily and follow me. Everyone, we'll take up the cross when we want to. We do. We think our membership in church is like, what do you have these, what are those cards? What cost, do you have Costco? Yeah. These, what do you have here? Sam's? Yeah, so yeah, you use it when?
When you go to the store.
Yeah, when you go to the store, when you need something, right? That's what has happened to a lot of our involvement in church or church membership. We use it when we want it. That's not possible. For a Christian, for an Orthodox Christian, we're not a club. We're not. This discipleship, in order to evangelize and to be a true disciple, let him deny himself, take up the cross daily, and then follow me. This taking up the cross, to bear Christ on a daily basis, to have discipline. And that's where the Greek word is wonderful here, is ascesis, the one who trains like an athlete training for the Olympics. And that word is very clear. It's ascesis. That's why every Christian is meant to be an ascetic, because we are in a spiritual warfare. We are training to win that prize. Huh? There's no prize for coming fourth, or third, or second. I mean, of course, you have medals now, but that prize, that goal, to train like a disciplined athlete, evangelism and discipleship, koinonia, fellowship. The moment I say the word fellowship, what comes to mind? Donuts and, or, if it's in North Carolina, it's lunch every Sunday. What is fellowship? Yes.
Being together with other people that believe in God.
Being together with people who believe in God. But there is something deeper in fellowship. And by the way, if you really, where do you think I took this from? Where do you think I took the 5 functions of the Kingdom Focused Church from? Anyone attend service yesterday? You did? Only one person attended service? Everyone did, right? You read the epistle? You heard the epistle? You did? If you didn't, go back, read Acts 2. Those 5 functions of a kingdom-focused church taken from Acts 2. When Saint Peter gets up and talks about what the church must be, and this is the very center of what the early church did. So fellowship is not just about getting together, but getting together and also looking out for those who were not as fortunate. They brought things together. Apostles and members of the church came together, fellowship, worship, sang songs, broke bread. But they brought what they had, put it together, and then they did what? Diaconia. From where you get the word deacon, you get ministry. So it is only when you come together and put your resources together can you have outreach, can you have true ministry. And when you have evangelism, discipleship, fellowship, ministry, then only does your liturgy become truly meaningful. There is no point in standing for a 5-hour service if our fellowship, our ministry, our discipleship, and our evangelism is all in disorder. Our worship becomes orthodox. Not because we serve for 5 hours, 7 hours. Not because we pray 7 times. Not because we kneel down and we say Kyrie eleison. Or not because we have all these long services. Nothing. Even though they should never be called long services at all. But our worship becomes truly meaningful when all these elements go hand in hand. I highly encourage that you go home and read Acts 2, because this is a wonderful. I leave you, I end my talk and ask ourselves, where can I become good news for my brothers and sisters? Where can I improve in my discipline, in my ascesis? How can I come together to put my resources together with my brothers and sisters so that I can truly become a deacon, a deaconess in the church? And then when all that comes together, my prayers, my worship, my chanting, my incensing, my kneeling, my prostrations, my confessions, and my proclamation of the creed, and the saying of the Our Father several times, becomes truly meaningful. Thy will be done, thy kingdom come. That prayer becomes manifest in our lives. I leave you with a story that I heard once. I might have said this before. There was a church once built in the mountaintops of Switzerland. And like your wonderful and beautiful church in Elmhurst, when the church was built, it was built on the top of a mountain. And the only thing that the church, the parish as a whole, or the parish priest decided, the one thing we're not going to put in this church are lights. But he told all, they were after all made up of villagers, but he said, I want you to bring, every time you come for worship, I really want you to bring a lamp from your respective homes and hang it in the church, which will provide the light to this particular church. And it was a wonderful sight for the villagers who lived at the foot of the hill. They would see these group of worshippers bear their lamps and go up to the church. And the church that stood on the top of the mountain without any light, as people walked in, the church became brighter and brighter and brighter, warmer and warmer. And the lamps they carried from their respective homes kept the church lit and warm. In the same way, we can have all the heating, we can have all the artificial lighting, but for a church to truly shine out to the world, it is the light that we ourselves bring when we come to church, when we are in the church, when we become the church. And it is that light that Christ has given us, that is He Himself. It is that light we shine to the world. Ask ourselves, because of me, Timothy, because of you, is the light in my church dim or more bright? And where do we want to be? Hopefully, we want to be all that makes our churches shine out brightly, because that is the light of Christ. May all honor, praise and glory, thanksgiving and adoration be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, one true God, now and always, forever and ever. Amen. And the words of Barnabas Teremeni, thank you for listening. God bless.